Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. We are here again. That is a miracle in itself. Every day that we wake up, that means that we are given another chance. We have a heartbeat, and that we need to get things right. If we don't have them right in our lives, we went to a memorial service today, and my husband went to a funeral service day before Thursday. So there's many people that are passing, and we never know when our expiration date is, and it's what we do in the dash. I've always heard that, from the birth to the end of life. It's what we do in that dash that makes a deciding factor of where it is that we are going to spend our eternity. And that is important to me. I don't know about y'all, but that's vitally important to me, because forever is forever. I'm fixing to be 62 years old, and I gotta tell you that it is like being 2 compared to eternity, or even less than that, to be honest with you, because eternity is forever. And I know that I want to go to that place of peace and not that place of torment. But we're going to continue from where we left off last week. And we are reading out of the book of Esther. And the topic, or the title is, Are You an Influencer or Destroyer? Part 2. So we are going to start in chapter 5. You guys can go back and you can listen to the message and see where we're at. Because so many times people talk about reading books, and they read books in the world, and they'll have ones that are on the hot list, and people are, all excited about reading that new book that just came out by so-and-so author, and they'll sit down and they'll read those books and not put them down. But to open up a book in the Bible and read it, that's a foreign thing. People don't like to do that. They don't want to sit down and read the Word. But they'll read all these other novels, love stories, fiction stories, all this kind of stuff. These are real life stories, real life events that took place in people's lives. And they were inspired by the Most High to write them down on paper. That's why they had scribes. People would talk about their story, and then the scribe would write it down. If you're not a good writer, if it's papyrus paper back then, and if you are a good writer and someone can read your writing, that would be a good thing to be a scribe, because some people don't have such good writing, and you can't read their writing. So ask the Lord to give you scribes. Right now, you can dictate. You can speak it into the phone and it'll text it, but watch out.
If you have an accent, it doesn't.
It'll mess it up.
And truck and duck.
Yeah. It's like when you go on Mr. Google and try to put in an address and it messes it up. So you're better off just
writing it down.
Writing it yourself, or making sure the person beside you is writing it. You have to proofread it and make sure it's what you said. Because people can inject words in there that you didn't put in there. Same thing with a text message. They can copy and paste it and add words to it and get you in a real bad place. So anyway, we're going to open up in prayer. And Yahweh, I thank you for this day. I thank you for this time that we have come together to assemble with the saints, that we come and we glean and learn from your word, from Basara, from Sister Esther, and her uncle Mordecai, and Haman, and the queen, and everyone that are the characters in this story that played a role in this season and time in life, and that it is pinned down for us to learn from their experience that they lived out. And I just ask forgiveness for anything that I may have said or done or even thought against your will, your statutes, or your commandments. I thank you for your mercy and your grace. I thank you for your wisdom and your knowledge and your understanding. I thank you that I'm just a willing vessel, and I ask that you would speak through me, that my mouth would be your mouth, that the words that come out of these lips, these earthen lips, that they would be led by your Ruach HaKodesh, your Holy Spirit. That those that are under the sound of my voice would apprehend the time that we're in and understand where we are. Where we are in the natural and where we are in the spirit realm. Where we are in our relationships with you and where we aren't. Are we an influencer of good or bad? Are we destroying people's lives, or are we wreaking havoc? Are we influencing them to be better? Because we're one or the other. We either destroy or we lift up. We either encourage or we tear down. And I thank you that through this real life example, that we can learn which way it is that we need to go. We need to follow righteousness. We need to follow integrity. And that people are watching us. They're watching our every move. They're watching our speech and our conduct. They're watching our behaviors. They're watching our attitudes. They're watching how we handle situations and how we respond. And we're going to have to answer for that one day. Was I good in the roles that you placed me in? Was I a good daughter? Was I a good sister? Was I a good mother? Was I a good grandmother? Was I a good co-worker? Was I a good leader and a good supervisor? Did I leave a lasting impression of goodness? Or did I leave a lasting impression of destroying lives and being someone that caused strife and discord? What was coming out of my lips? Did I have a holy conversation? Or did I spew out words and anger and emotion that struck people's heart like a sword? Did I cut with my lips? Did I cut with my stare? Did I cut with my response? How did I do in this life that you have given to me for however long? It may be today, it may be my last day. And what would be said in your kingdom? People in this earth realm can say from their perspective that their perspective doesn't matter, only yours does. Only yours does, because you are never sleeping. You never slumber. You're always watching everyone in this whole entire world. And you keep note and you write down record in our book. Everything we've done in our life is pinned down on paper, just like I'm reading from the book of Esther. It was pinned down. Everything we've done in our life. And I thank you for showing each one of us where our weaknesses are so that we may be stronger, so that we may mature and not be children and still sucking on milk. That we need to eat the meat of your word. And when we become an adult, we act like an adult. We put away our childish ways. And I pray that you would search us and see if there be any wicked thing in us. That we would confess it one to another, as your word says in James 5:16 and 17. Then we could pray for one another, and then we can be healed. There's too many people out there that have been destroyed and damaged, and they're still hurting and bleeding. And there's not been confession. There's not been a conversation between people that there needs to be conversations between. And I thank you for these conversations that Esther and Mordecai had. I thank you that they were able to be in a location where they were near each other, where even if there was a messenger that was sent to deliver a message, that it was delivered correctly and it was by a trusted person. I pray that this message that is delivered today, that you have trusted me, Yahweh, to deliver it unto the people. And those that are under the sound of my voice, whether right now, whether in the future, it will hit the mark. It will open up the heart and it will pour in the balm of Gilead. And I thank you for the healing that's going to come forth this day. In the name of Yahushua HaMashiach, the Christ who I pray. All is well.
All is well.
Esther chapter 5. Now it came to pass on the third day that Esther put on her royal apparel and stood in the inner court of the king's house, over against the king's house. And the king sat upon his royal throne in the royal house, over against the gate of the house. Okay, so back then, you had to be summoned to go before the king. And what we were reading earlier was there was a situation that was a 911 situation. And Esther had called her maidens and Mordecai and the people of Yehuda to fast without food or water for 3 days, because there was going to be a hit against that nation, that Haman wanted to have them annihilated. So she's by faith going in to present herself before the king, and she wanted them to pray on her behalf, because she could be killed. Because you don't go before the king any kind of way. You don't come in unannounced. Okay? In verse 2. And it was so, when the king saw Esther, the queen, standing in the court, that she obtained favor in his sight. And the king held out to Esther the golden scepter that was in his hand. So Esther drew near and touched the top of the scepter. She was given access. It says here that she obtained favor. When you go before people of notoriety or people of authority, and you go before them and you have a petition, this is one thing that you want to have to happen, is for you to be given favor, to have access to come in and make your petition known. To ask those that are in authority, because there's been a serious decree that has been told to go out into the land to kill the Hebrews, to annihilate them. Babies, children, grown-ups, everybody. Every single person. Because Haman had hatred. Because they would not bow down to him. And they knew the laws. They were not to bow down to anybody and make them a god. And Mordecai stood his ground. Mordecai was not going to bow down. Verse 3. Then said the king unto her, What wilt thou, Queen Esther, and what is thy request? It shall be given thee to half of the kingdom. He's telling her ahead of time, baby girl, you got favor. Whatever it is you want, you can have. My husband and I were just visiting someone that had a little 1-year-old little girl. This little girl had curls like you would not believe, and the biggest, beautiful blue eyes that you ever seen. And I said, baby girl, I said, you got them wrapped around your little pinky finger, don't you? She was just a grinning from ear to ear. She's already walking. She's just the cutest thing you ever seen. And they're like, yep, she is. I said, but when she gets older, y'all gonna have to put her in a closet and beat the men off, because she's just as precious as she can be. Because that's what they run after. That's what the devil wants to do, is he wants to go after those that are beauty queens, and she's already been put in beauty pageants. This is how Esther became queen. Because as we talked last week, that was a beauty contest. Because that's what he was looking for. He wanted a young, fair, spotless virgin. He wanted them to be all brought together where he could pick out which one he wanted. That was the first beauty contest. And Esther won it. And that's what the world looks at. The world looks at the outside. But Esther had to be prepared for a year before she was brought before the king. And you'll hear about that in the last message. But you can't just come before the king any kind of way. You got to prepare your body. You got to prepare your spirit, mind, soul. You just can't come before him all filthy, dirty. There's a way and a standard that you come before the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And Esther answered, if it seemed good unto the king. You see how they always say that? If it pleased the king. If it seemed good to the king. They're saying they're coming with such a terminology that they're putting the ball in his court, but they're making a suggestion if he's in agreement to it. You see how savvy she is? If it seemed good unto the king, let the king and Haman come this day into the banquet that I have prepared for him. Because she wanted to have a banquet for Haman. She already found out about Mr. Haman through Mordecai. It got back to her. People think that people that are in relationship with the Most High, that things can't get back to them, but it does. And they don't even have to go looking. It'll come knocking on their door. There will be many gates and doors that'll be open with access for information to be given that you would have never thought would happen in your wildest dreams. And then the king said, cause Haman to make haste, that he may do as Esther hath said. So the king and Haman came to the banquet that Esther had prepared. And the king said unto Esther at the banquet, they were at the banquet of wine, what is thy petition? And it shall be granted thee. And what is thy request? Even to half of the kingdom it shall be performed. He's reiterating that again. I'll give you half the kingdom, sweetheart. You just tell me what it is you want, and you got it, girl. Because you got favor. You're my wife. You're the queen. I trust you. You have access. Then answered Esther and said, my petition and my request is, if I have found favor in the sight of the king, only in his eyes, not in the people's eyes, in his eyes. And if it please the king to grant my petition and to perform my request, let the king and Haman come to the banquet that I shall prepare for them, and I will do tomorrow as the king hath said. So she's saying, okay, she's going to ask for this feast, and she's wanting them to come, and she's going to prepare it for them, and see if it's okay with him, because she had to ask permission. She couldn't just go right then and there and say, here's a feast, I want you to come and join with me, and we're going to sit down and talk. She had to make arrangements ahead of time. She had to make a reservation, basically, for dinner. Let me make a dinner reservation, and I want you, king, and you, Haman, to come to this dinner reservation. Then went Haman forth that day, joyful and with a glad heart. But when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gate, that he stood not up nor moved for him, he was full of indignation against Mordecai. He had hatred for Mordecai, because he wasn't going to serve him. He wasn't going to bow down to him and honor him. Nevertheless, Haman refrained himself, and when he came home, he sent and called for his friends and Zeresh his wife. And Haman told them of the glory of his riches and the multitude of his children and all the things wherein the king had promoted him. and how he had advanced him above the princesses and servants of the kingdom. So he was given bragging rights. He was going around and bragging that he was given an invitation for the reserved dinner for only him and the queen and the king. He was given favor, and he was shouting it from the rooftops. And Haman said, moreover, yea, Esther the queen did let no man come in with the king into the banquet, and she had prepared but myself. And tomorrow am I invited unto her also with the king. So he's bragging. He's like, nah. I'm the only one that got invited in the whole palace. Nobody else in the palace gets to come to this dinner but me. Look at that.
Jealousy rots his bones.
Yet all this availed me nothing, so long as I see Mordecai the Jew, and as we said last week, Jew means Hebrew, sitting at the king's gate. Is that some type of hatred or what? He's saying, you know what, all this stuff is null and void, but I still ain't happy because I don't want to see Mordecai. I want him taken out. I want him killed. Then said Zeresh, his wife, and all his friends unto him, let a gallows be made of 50 cubits high, and tomorrow speak thou unto the king, that Mordecai may be hanged thereon. Then go thou in merrily with the king into the banquet. And the thing pleased Haman, and he caused the gallows to be made. Boy, what kind of wife and friends does he have? They're plotting a murder. That's what that is. They are plotting premeditated murder is what that is. So all of them need to go and be hung on the gallows. Lord of mercy. His wife and his friends.
It's pretty bad to have it out for somebody like that.
I'm telling you what, that's hatred right there. That's straight up hatred. For you to want that to happen, I mean, and so many people are like that. They're so...
Yeah, they pay people to go kill other people.
Yeah, it's a hit. That was a bounty. So he was going to have a bounty on his head, basically. Look at that. And to have the gallows built. You can imagine. Wow. In chapter 6, verse 1. On that night, could not the king sleep? And he commanded to bring the book of records of the Chronicles, and they were read before the king. Where's that book at? Do you see that in your 66 books? No. It's not there. They stripped it from the Bible back in the 70 A.D. And it was found written that Mordecai had told of Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's chamberlains, the keepers of the door, who sought to lay hand on King Ahasuerus. So they were going to try to kill the king. And he found out about it. Mordecai found out about it. And the king said, what honor and dignity hath been done to Mordecai for this? Then said the king's servants that ministered unto him, there is nothing done for him. So why in the world do you think it was that the king couldn't sleep? And then he just so happened to ask them to bring in this book of the Chronicles, which was a record book. Like I told you, they wrote everything down that took place, of these two men that were trying to kill the king. And Mordecai found out about it, and he reported it. And they got hung. And he's like, what's been done for Mordecai for this? There was nothing. He didn't get no reward, no tribute, no nothing for saving the king. So, in verse 4, And the king said, who is in the court? Now Haman was come into the outward court of the king's house to speak unto the king to hang Mordecai on the gallows that he had prepared for him. And the king's servant said unto him, Behold, Haman standeth in the court. And the king said, Let him come in. So Haman came in, and the king said unto him, What shall be done unto the man whom the king delighteth to honor? Now Haman thought in his heart, To whom would the king delight to do honor more than to myself? He's asking him this because he's thinking, oh, he's going to honor me. Oh my goodness. They're asking me to come to this banquet, to this reservation here at the palace, and now he's wanting to find out how I can be honored. Let me just think of a way that I can be exalted. Oh my goodness. Boy, he was high-minded, wasn't he? And Haman answered the king, For the man whom the king delighteth to honor, let the royal apparel be brought which the king useth to wear, and the horse that the king rideth upon, and the crown royal which is set upon his head. So he was wanting to be like the king, right? Or prince, should I say.
Dressed like the king.
Yep. And let this apparel and horse be delivered to the hand of the one of the king's most noble princes, that they may array the man withal whom the king delighteth to honor, and bring him on horseback through the street of the city, and proclaim before him, Thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delighteth to honor. So he done got a plan, hadn't he? He thinks that he's going to be the one that's going to be riding through the city with the king's attire on his royal horse, and he's going to be so exalted. He's so prideful. Look at this. Then the king said to Haman, Make haste and take the apparel and the horse, as thou hast said, and do even so to Mordecai the Jew, that sitteth at the king's gate. Let nothing fail of all that thou hast spoken. Can you imagine? Can you imagine the expression on his face? I guarantee you his jaw dropped. He's got to be the one to go and take all this stuff to Mordecai.
I just see the steam coming out of his ears.
That's like what you see on them cartoons. With those characters with the steam coming out of their ears. You can just imagine this is what Haman looked like. I bet his face was beet red.
Man.
And he was furious. Oh my goodness. Then took Haman the apparel and the horse, and arrayed Mordecai, and brought him on horseback through the street of the city, and proclaimed before him, Thus shall it be done unto the man whom the king delighteth to honor. Could you imagine? Haman probably had to have the horse reins in his hand, and he was going to parade Mordecai through the city. Could you just imagine that happening? You talk about falling in your own ditch. Oh my goodness. He deserved everything he got, buddy, and he's going to get more. Oh my goodness. You don't mess with the Hebrews. You don't mess with the chosen people of the Most High. You don't mess with them. You can plot and you can plan whatever you want to do, but I guarantee you it's all going to come out in the end, because the truth outlives a lie every single time. You can't hide nothing. You can't hide nothing. His intentions, his ill intent, his hatred, everything. It was seen. And the Most High allowed the king to have a dream, to bring out the books. The books are going to be opened one day, y'all. Your book of life is going to be open, and it's going to be brought before the King of Kings. Wow. And verse 12. And Mordecai came again to the king's gate. But Haman hasted to his house, mourning and having his head covered. He was put to shame, wasn't he? He was put to shame. And Haman told Zeresh his wife and all his friends everything that had befallen him. Then said his wise men and Zeresh his wife unto him, if Mordecai be of the seed of the Jews / Hebrews, before whom thou hast begun to fall, thou shalt not prevail against him, but shalt surely fall before him. They forewarned him, didn't they?
Yep.
And while they were yet talking with him, came the king's chamberlains and hasted to bring Haman into the banquet that Esther had prepared. Okay, he's been summoned. Okay, he's got smut on his face. He's been put to shame. He didn't have things accomplished like he thought it was going to be accomplished. Now, he's got to go to the dinner. So the king and Haman came to the banquet with Esther the queen. And the king said again unto Esther on the second day at the banquet of wine, what is thy petition, Queen Esther? And it shall be granted thee. And what is thy request? And it shall be performed, even to the half of the kingdom. He's reiterating that again. She was a patient woman. She didn't move in haste. She moved in the timing that was allotted her. So she had time during the first banquet to the second banquet to pray and to keep interceding on behalf of this petition that she was going to ask, and this request that she was going to ask the king.
She honored her elder and done what he asked her to.
She did. She honored her father figure.
To be quiet until he said something.
That's right.
How many can do that?
That's right.
You know,
she was patient and she waited.
Was very patient.
She waited because he
Very
told her, he gave her guidance on what to do. For we are sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be slain, and to perish. But if we had been sold for bondmen and bondwomen, I had held my tongue, although the enemy could not countervail the king's damage. Then the king Ahasuerus answered and said unto Queen Esther the queen, who is he, and where is he, that durst presume in his heart to do so? And Esther said, the adversary and enemy is this wicked Haman. Then Haman was afraid before the king and the queen. See there? That's what I'm talking about.
He should have been.
He should have been. But what we talk about, how many times have we talked about this? You got with someone, you sit down with them, one-on-one, face-to-face. James 5:16 and 17. You confess your fault that you have against him. What is Esther doing? She's confessing. You are the one that has plotted and planned this. You are the wicked one. And she called him out in front of the one that has authority. And in verse 7, and the king, arising from the banquet of wine in his wrath, went into the palace garden. And Haman stood up to make request for his life to Esther the queen. For he saw that there was an evil determined against him by the king. He's like, you ain't messing with my woman or her people. You imagine the expression on his face? And Haman saw it. But you know what? Haman saw it. And Mordecai saw Haman's expression that he would make towards Mordecai. But Mordecai didn't act on that. He went to his Abba Father in prayer for him to handle the situation and how to do it. And in verse 8, then the king returned out of the palace garden and to the palace of the banquet of wine, and Haman was fallen upon the bed whereon Esther was. Then said the king, will he force the queen also before me in the house? As the word went out of the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face. He's like, oh my gosh, he's going to molest my wife too?
Because they have a bed for her to lay on in the big.
Yeah.
Instead of sitting.
That's what I was saying. How do they get in the bed?
And he was there.
She has a bed. Because if you watch these movies and stuff, they get that from the Bible. And the king sits on his throne, and the queen has a bed right there next to the throne that the queen that he calls in, that's where she's at. That's the queen's bed. And Haman,
you don't touch that.
You know,
he touched it.
The only person that touches that bed, there's two people that touches that bed. That's the queen and the king.
You don't touch that bed. And he had the audacity to touch her bed?
He fell on it.
Ooh, Lord of mercy. Oh my God, he was begging. That's what he was doing. Begging for mercy. Too late now, buddy. And Harbona, one of the chamberlains, said before the king, behold also the gallows 50 cubits high, which Haman had made for Mordecai, who had spoken good for the king, standeth in the house of Haman. Then the king said, hang him thereon. So see, he got hung on his own gallows. So they hanged Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. Then was the king's wrath pacified. Let me tell you something. They took care of business right then and there. Right then and there. They didn't go before no court. They didn't have to wait for no supreme judge. He was the king. He made the ruling. He was power and authority. And it was executed right then and there. There wasn't no waiting. They put that bag on his head and they took him straight to the hanging. They took care of matters. If things were handled like that today, I guarantee you there wouldn't be as many population as there are.
No, there wouldn't be
I guarantee you. There wouldn't be people in prisons and jails. I guarantee you. It would be handled ASAP. In chapter 8, verse 1. On that day, did the king Ahasuerus give the house of Haman, the Jews' enemy, unto Esther the queen. That's the Hebrews. And Mordecai came before the king, for Esther had told what he was unto her. Because he told her, he said, you need to be quiet. I don't need you to say nothing till I tell you to say something. So this was the time. And the king took off his ring, which he had taken from Haman, and gave it unto Mordecai. And Esther set Mordecai over the house of Haman. So now not only was Esther elevated, Mordecai was elevated. Because you never know in the position that the Most High puts you in. At the time you're put there at the beginning, you may not understand why you're there. But later on down the road, you will see it. If you're just patient and you wait on the Most High. Because he says, be still and know that I am Yahweh. You got to be still. You got to wait. Because it doesn't say how long Mordecai was at that king's gate, at that palace. How long he had been there in that position. I'm sure he had no idea that he would have been elevated to basically second in command down the road. Through the orphan that he had taken in to win that beauty contest, to be the queen, that he could have access to the king of all authority to save a nation. Think about that. That's powerful. So don't despise the small beginnings. The Most High talks about that. Don't despise the small beginnings, because you don't know what the end result's going to be. And Esther spake again before the king, and fell down at his feet, and besought him with tears to put away the mischief of Haman the Agagite, and his device that he had devised against the Hebrews. Then the king held out the golden scepter towards Esther. So Esther arose and stood before the king and said, If it please the king, and if I have found favor in his sight, and the things seem right before the king, and I be pleasing in thine eyes, let it be written to reverse the letters devised by Haman the son of Hammedatha the Agagite, which he wrote to destroy the Jews, which are in all the king's provinces. She was begging him, with tears rolling down her eyes, to save her people. She was interceding. For how can I endure to see the evil that shall come unto my people? Or how can I endure to see the destruction of my kindred? Then King Ahasuerus said unto Esther the queen, and to Mordecai the Hebrew, Behold, I have given Esther the house of Haman, and him they have hanged upon the gallows, because he laid his hand upon the Hebrews. Write ye also for the Hebrews as it liketh you, in the king's name, and seal it with the king's ring. For the writing which is written in the king's name and sealed with the king's ring may no man reverse. So he's given them authority. He's given Esther authority to reverse this curse. Then were the king's scribes called at that time in the 3rd month, that is the month Sivan, on the 23 day thereof. And it was written, according to all that Mordecai commanded unto the Hebrews and to the lieutenants and the deputies and rulers of the provinces which are from India unto Ethiopia, 127 provinces, unto every province according to the writing thereof, unto every people after their language, and to the Hebrews according to their writing and according to their language, because it was a melting pot. There was many languages that were there. They wanted it to be out there in every language, for every tribe, for every person, that they were not going to be harmed. To give them authority. And he wrote in King Ahasuerus' name and sealed it with the king's ring and sent letters by post on horseback. There's your U.S. mail right there. And riders on mules and camels and young dromedaries. Wherein the king granted the Jews which were in every city to gather themselves together and to stand for their life, to destroy, to slay, and to cause to perish all the power of the people and province that would assault them, both little ones and women, and to take the spoil of them for a prey. He's given them authority to fight back. You protect your family. You protect your children. You protect your people. And upon one day, in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, namely upon the 13th day of the month, the 12th month, which is the month Adar. We talked about that in the last message, that these months that we have in this calendar year are not correct. They worship pagan gods. It tells you right here, the month of Adar, which was the 12th month. It's not December. And the copy of the writing for a commandment to be given in every province was published unto all people, and that the Hebrews should be ready against that day to avenge themselves on their enemies. He has given them authority. You take up your sword, whatever it is, and I want you to fight back. Because he could not renounce the other letter that was sent out by Haman to kill him. So he had to write another letter to give him authority to fight back. And Mordecai went out from the presence of the king in royal apparel of blue and white, and with a great crown of gold, and with a garment of fine linen and purple. And the city of Shushan rejoiced and was glad. The Hebrews had light and gladness and joy and honor, and in every province and in every city, whithersoever the king's commandment and his decree came, the Hebrews had joy and gladness, a feast of a good day, and many of the people of the land became Hebrews. For the fear of the Hebrews fell upon them. So they joined with them because they feared them, because the king had given them authority, and they recognized it. That is powerful. What an influencer were they, because they stood up. They stood up, they fasted, they prayed, they sacrificed for one another. They were a people that came together in one mind, in one accord. And they were able to be successful in this matter, because they had the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords that was of all authority. Because he gave the king a dream. And he worked with Mordecai and he worked with Esther. And he put the three of them together in that one place to be that threefold cord, but could not be broken, so that they could come together. And the king recognized who they were. He honored them. How many rulers of authority do we have that honor the Most High's people? Not many. We need some Deborahs.
If any.
We need some Deborahs as
Esther's.
we need some Deborahs as judges. We need some Esthers as queens. I'm telling you. This beast system that we live in, they were in a beast system with Haman under their rulership. Oh my goodness.
Well, in today's times, when you look at current world events, what world leader is truly about the old ways, about those old paths that we've been reading about and talking about?
Not many.
Because it's easy to say, oh yeah, I believe in Jesus, oh yeah, you know, I go to church, I pay my tithes.
There's not any, because
people love to say Donald Trump pays his tithes. They love to say that. These politicians just, and it's not just Donald Trump, Nancy Pelosi,
you gotta live
Hillary
it.
Clinton.
I don't care how much money you give. You gotta live it. That's a donation.
How many of them, though?
You gotta live it.
How many of them do you see as world leaders?
They don't, because they're not in that place. And you know who's supposed to be in those places? Is the prophets. The Most High appointed prophets in the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. And the kings were supposed to go to the prophets and ask the prophets, am I supposed to go into battle, or am I supposed to not go into battle? Am I supposed to do this? Am I supposed to do this? What am I supposed to do? They went to the prophets because the prophets heard from the Most High, and the prophets would give them instructions.
See, they didn't even have to do that to start off with, because there were no kings until they started arguing
Exactly.
and wanting the king. They
That's
actually
right.
straight to him to start off with.
That's right, and they didn't want to do that.
That's in 1 Samuel.
That's because they wanted to go and be like everybody else and vote for their own king.
Well, look at it.
It's no different than voting for president.
So-
Has anything changed?
Reading the other day that there's people that could go to hell. This earth is so wicked. People that could go to hell could come back and tell the ones that are still here what hell was like, and they still won't believe it. They still want to live.
We already know about that.
Yep.
That's book.
I was about to say
There
that's
is
recorded.
stories as remember that one guy we listened to on when we was going to Michael's
Mm-hmm.
about that he'd went to hell and witnessed all this stuff
You ain't gonna believe it. Michael just got through teaching on that series about because you don't believe. And he said that's what the Most High told him. People don't believe. They don't
Well,
believe.
you know, and that's the thing. How many counts of people with near-death experiences, or they actually died and went, wherever their eternity was going to be, and they got to come back and tell about it? Where is it at about Lazarus and the rich
And
man?
the rich man, yep.
And the rich man's in hell, and he said, "Please send Lazarus back
My 5 brothers.
to warn my brothers." And he said, "No,
No, can't do it.
because they won't believe him. They had Moses, they had the prophets, they have the laws."
You had me.
Well, Michael.
See,
Yahshua came and
that's the
walked.
thing that gets me is like how many times, and it's almost like unless we experience it for our very selves.
And then that doesn't work. A lot of times.
That's true too.
It don't work.
That's crazy.
You know,
Because really, it should be enough just to have the word.
Michael said the other day, he goes, I could be popular, like some of these little guys on TV,
Be quiet.
but I have to compromise. He said, I'm not compromising.
I'm not
I'm speaking
compromising.
the truth.
I'm
and
not
he
gonna
said-
lie.
He told me and Marlene the other day that, if he told Marlene, I think he did, but I know I was talking to him. I think she did too, but this is an end-time ministry. Michael's ministry is an end-time ministry, and we're an end-time ministry. And tell the truth, no matter what.
That's right.
'Cause
I was at that hospital. I've been at 2 different hospitals in 2 days. All these sick people, truly sick people. And I've been there with family members, and I got to looking around, and I'm thinking, a lot of these people say that we believe this or that, and the healing and all this stuff. Well, where is that at?
where's Benny Hinn at?
Where is it at?
Benny Hinn had all
Where are these
thousands and
pastors
thousands and
that are on
thousands.
TV that say that they can heal their congregations? Where
Why
are
ain't
these
they walking the halls
pastors
of the hospital healing the sick?
walking around in
Yeah, where were
$3,000
they at when
suits
COVID
and driving
at?
nice cars?
Well, I gotta tell you where the healing is. The healing is in confession.
Right.
That's where the healing
and that's
is.
the
It
word
ain't
too.
in
You
somebody
said that
laying their
a minute
hand
ago.
on somebody, because that ain't gonna get it. There's been too much of that. Just like Michael has said, there's been too many people praying and not obeying.
Yeah.
You praying and not obeying. That ain't getting you nowhere. But chapter 9, look at here. Now in the 12th month, here it is again, that is a month. A dare.
There.
On the 13th day of the same, when the king's commandment and his decree drew near to put in execution. Excuse me. Need something to drink. Excuse me. Now in the 12th month, that is the month of Adar, on the 13th day of the same, when the king's commandment and his decree drew near to be put in execution, in the day that the enemies of the Jews / Hebrews hoped to have power over them. Excuse me.
I was gonna say you need something else to drink.
They want me to get this word out right here. But
Here,
it's
you want
coming.
some warm coffee to help clear that.
in the day that the enemies of the Jews hoped to have power over them, though it was turned to the contrary, that the Hebrews had rule over them that hated them. You see there? It flipped. The coin flipped, didn't it? What they thought that they were going to be successful in, it turned around and flipped on them. Right? So be careful who you might have hatred towards, because
Ain't anybody.
it'll come back to you. No, you're not. I hate the enemy.
Well,
I hate the enemy. That's who I hate.
yeah,
But I hate the enemy that is used through people, and they allow them to be influenced by the enemy. Let me put it that way. But don't think that you're so high-minded that you can overrule what the Most High has put in place.
that's pride too.
Because you can't. It will never happen. The Hebrews gathered themselves together in their cities throughout all the provinces of the king Ahasuerus to lay hand on such as sought their hurt. And no man could withstand them, for the fear of them fell upon all people. You see that?
All the people.
All people. Fear fell on them. And all the rulers of the provinces and the lieutenants and the deputies and officers of the king helped the Hebrews, because the fear of Mordecai fell upon them. Look at that. Because Mordecai was in that position, that he had that authority. The king had given him the ring, and they knew if they touched his people, that there was going to be a day of reckoning. For Mordecai was great in the king's house, and his fame went out throughout all the provinces. For this man Mordecai waxed greater and greater. He was renowned. Thus the Hebrews smote all their enemies with the stroke of the sword, and slaughter and destruction, and did what they would unto those that hated them. And in Shushan the palace the Hebrews slew and destroyed 500 men. Look at that. Right there in the palace. And Parshandatha, and Dalphon, and Aspatha, and Poratha, and Adaliah, and Aradatha, and Parmashta, and Arishiah, and Aradiah, and Bashjazatha, the 10 sons.
All the us.
Right? Boy, what kind of names. Man. They were Agagites. Those were the Agagites. The 10 sons of Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the enemy of the Hebrews, slew they. But on the spoil laid they not their hand.
They didn't touch it.
On that day, the number of those that were slain in Shushan the palace was brought before the king. And the king said unto Esther the queen, the Hebrews have slain and destroyed 500 men in Shushan the palace, and the 10 sons of Haman. What have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? Now, what is thy petition? And it shall be granted thee. Or what is thy request further? And it shall be done. Then Esther said, if it please the king, let it be granted to the Hebrews, which are in Shushan, to do tomorrow also according unto this day's decree, and let Haman's 10 sons be hanged upon the gallows. And the king commanded it so to be done. And the decree was given at Shushan, and they hanged Haman's 10 sons. For the Hebrews that were in Shushan gathered themselves together on the 14th day, also of the month Adar, and slew 300 men in Shushan. But on the prey they laid not their hand. So see what they did there. What Haman's plot and plan was to take out the nation of the Hebrews. And what happened was not only did he get taken out, but his seed got taken
All
out.
10 of them.
So all 10 of his sons, the Agagites, they were taken out, and their nation. So everything fell back on his own head, what he had plotted and planned.
No pun intended.
Right? But the other Hebrews that were in the king's provinces gathered themselves together and stood for their lives, and had rest from their enemies, and slew of their foes 70 and 5,000. But they laid not their hand on the prey. And on the 13th day of the month of Adar, and on the 14th day of the same rested they, and made it a day of feasting and gladness. But the Hebrews that were at Shushan assembled together on the 13th day thereof, and on the 14th thereof, and on the 15th day of the same they rested, and made it a day of feasting and gladness. Therefore the Hebrews of the villages that dwelt in the unwalled towns made the 14th day of the month of Adar a day of gladness and feasting, and a good day, and of sending portions one to another. And Mordecai wrote these things, and sent letters unto all the Hebrews that were in all the provinces of the king Ahasuerus, both nigh and far, to establish this among them, that they should keep the 14th day of the month Adar, and the 15th day of the same yearly, as the days wherein the Hebrews rested from their enemies, and the month which was turned unto them from sorrow to joy, and from mourning into a good day, that they should make them days of feasting and joy, and of sending portions one to another, and gifts to the poor. And the Hebrews undertook to do as they had begun, and as Mordecai had written unto them, because Haman, the son of Hammedatha the Agagite, the enemy of all the Hebrews, had devised against the Hebrews to destroy them, and had cast her, that is, the lot, to consume them, and to destroy them. But when Esther came before the king, he commanded by letters that his wicked device, which he devised against the Hebrews, should return upon his own head, and that he and his son should be hanged on the gallows. Wherefore they called these days Purim, after the name of Pur. Therefore, for all the words of this letter, and of all that which they had seen concerning this matter, and which had come unto them, the Hebrews ordained, and took upon them and upon their seed, and upon all such as joined themselves unto them, so as it should not fail, that they would keep these 2 days according to their writing, and according to their appointed time every year, and that these days should be remembered and kept throughout every generation, every family, every province, and every city, and that these days of Purim should not fail from among the Hebrews, nor the memorial of them perish from their seed. Then Esther the queen, the daughter of Abihail, and Mordecai the Hebrew, wrote with all authority to confirm this second letter of Purim. And he sent the letters unto all the Hebrews to the 127 provinces of the kingdom of Ahasuerus, with words of peace and truth, to confirm these days of Purim in their times appointed, according as Mordecai the Jew and Esther the queen had enjoined them, and as they had decreed for themselves and for their seed the matters of fastings and their cry. And the decree of Esther confirmed these matters of Purim and it was written in the book. Look at this. It's the Feast of Esther. It's called the Feast of Purim because she was used, and Mordecai was used to save a nation, to save the children, to save the grandparents, to save everyone. And the king Ahasuerus laid a tribute upon the land and upon the isles of the sea, and all the acts of his power and of his might, and the declaration of the greatness of Mordecai unto the king advanced him. Are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of the Media and Persia? See there? There's the books right there.
Media and Persia.
Yes. For Mordecai the Hebrew was next unto King Ahasuerus, and great among the Hebrews, and accepted of the multitude of his brethren, seeking the wealth of his people, and speaking peace to all his seed.
Let's try this first chapter.
What a powerful, powerful message
Hey,
of an influencer and a destroyer.
what did he do? I mean, you know, not only did Mordecai tell Esther to be quiet, he was also quiet until the Most High told him to speak.
That's right.
You know, he prayed and fasted, and the Most High showed him that the two eunuchs were going to kill the king. And he got word to the king, and then he was just basically somebody at the gate for what.
He was a
And
gatekeeper.
they were brought in there like they were captives. They were captives. And what did he do? He was quiet. He was led by the Most High. And right here in verse 10, chapter 10, the last verse, the only person that was over him was the king.
That's right.
Just like Joseph.
Like Joseph. That's right.
He did. This
Joseph was put in the same position.
same position.
He was there to save his nation.
Saving that, and he had,
At the same
He had the
nation,
king's
just a
ring.
different generation.
Yes, that's right.
and
So there's always a hit on them. There's always been a hit on the Hebrews.
another thing is, don't be evil like Haman was. Haman was prideful. Haman thought he could get away with it. He thought, that, I'm going to get to wear the king's robe, and I'm going to get to do this. I'm going to ride the king's horses.
You got haughty-minded.
And, and what wound up, he wound up. Don't be a deceiver and plan something evil, because it will come back and bite you in the butt like it did Haman.
It'll come back on your own head.
Haman, not only did Haman's wife, you notice Haman's wife told him to go build them gallows. Then she found out that it was against the Jews, and what did she tell her own husband? Oh, you ain't gonna win this battle because this is against the Jews. You messed up.
Yep.
And not only that, probably what saved her from getting hung.
Her.
So that's
She
probably
knew.
what saved her from getting hung. But his sons, still 10 of them, they got their palace took from them. What happened to them?
They went down
All
with them.
10 of them got hung. All 10 of them. So,
Well, even in conjunction to what she was saying about how there was always a hit on on the Hebrews, the Most High always had somebody in place
yep,
as a rescuer,
yep.
as an intercessor, somebody to bridge between there. So we look at Joseph's example, and we look at Mordecai's example, And David, even though with all his faults and problems that he had, moving all the way over to Christ. And that's where it all leads up to, is that rescuer of a nation of his chosen people, the Hebrews. And he always had somebody there. He always had somebody there to
right at the right time.
to bridge that
At
gap.
the right time. You see, you think about us in our ministry, or the ministry we have here, Apostle Michael. You know, when we first started 20-something years ago, Apostle Michael, it was about Jesus and all, but the Most High showed Apostle Michael the truth. And he started opening doors and showing us. But is it popular? He's in time. We're in time because there's things that he's opened up to us with all these different books. And Marlena read about them today. And then in the book of Chronicles, and the book of this, and the book of that, and the
Persia,
month,
and what was that
the
one?
month,
Media.
the month of what?
Adair.
Adair,
It's the 12th month.
12th month.
And see, there was a holiday, what they call a holy day, is
for
what
Esther.
he was setting for them to do yearly in remembrance of being delivered from their enemies. The Feast of Purim, the Feast of Esther.
Where's all that at?
And no, they got Christmas and
Yeah.
Easter and Ishtar and all that they're going to celebrate. But
The 4th of July.
they're not told about this kind of stuff, you know? And you got to read the book. That's why it's like, you know what? The Most High led me to read this whole book, because how are you going to know about Esther's life unless you read the book? And then there's an addition to Esther.
Mm-hmm.
In the Apocrypha books, there's an addition.
You know, reading Genesis and all. You know, have you ever really sat down and read Genesis? You know, when Joseph went to his dad, so he wanted his kids to bless him. They had to stick their hand.
That was
Under
the act
his
I was
thigh.
telling you about.
They had to stick his hand under his thigh. You know, do I need to go over there and stick my hand under my wife's thigh and pray, or does she need to stick her hand under my thigh? And
There's
need
a
to
reason
pray?
why they did what they did.
Yeah, there's a reason. You know, like.
That's what they did when they blessed
You
him.
know, and even Abraham, before Abraham sent his servant out to find Isaac a wife, he had to put his hand under his thigh. And you know, you think about today, oh, I ain't gonna stick my hand under a man's thigh. No. Well, if the Most High tells you to stick your hand under somebody's thigh and pray and go, you better stick your hand under somebody's thigh and pray and go.
You think about the thigh. That, what do you call the femur bone?
That is the femur, and
That's
the
the
strongest
femur
bone
bone.
in
It's
the
the
body.
strongest bone. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's also
That's
the largest bone.
Mm-hmm. That's why I'm saying there's a reason why they do what they did, because you got to be able to stand up. When you are called and you are chosen and you are anointed to do the work that the Most High has called you to do, you're going to need strength. It is symbolic. It is prophetic. When he laid his hand under his thigh to bless him, you got to look at this stuff, and that's why I'm saying you got to go down deep and study the Word, because everything has purpose. They said it right here in the book, in the month of Adair. The 13th, 14th, and the 15th day they rested. But they were not ever to forget this. Do you think that they have done that? I'm sure they haven't done it.
It's
No,
been
they ain't
forgotten.
done it.
But see, this is what I'm talking about. It was a commandment. Dude, it was a command.
It said never let it go.
That was that king's command,
And
because
see,
you're supposed to
I
train
mean,
up your children in the way that they should go.
I'm thinking, you know, all right, you look at it like this, the Hebrews have been in captivity. You know, they were even in captivity over here. And they don't, like Michael said, we don't even know our original language.
Exactly.
We're under a false language. We speak a false language because that's what they brainwashed us. They took these books away from them, and they took these books out of the Bible so they can be brainwashed and forget about these traditions.
It's called programmed.
Yeah.
But even if you look at those 66 books just by themselves, and what we know is the Bible.
That's one of the 66 books right there.
In those, they're not in true chronological order.
No, they're not.
So certain books. So I caught myself. I read up to, what did I tell you the other day? I was reading Lamentations all the way up to chapter 3. I couldn't go to sleep. And it was a really heart-wrenching 3 chapters that I read, and they're lengthy.
That's why it's called Lamentations.
Because they lament.
They lament.
And I felt lamented when I read it.
So you know.
But if you look at the timeline, I remember thinking to myself, this seems like I'm thankful for that particular book, but it seems when you look at the Bible as a whole book, this book as a part of this big book seems not to be in its accurate place. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Like on a chronological timeline, but it gives a full account of what truly happened. It talked about the bondage, and it talked about the selling and the trading, and how Jerusalem was empty, and how everybody was in mourning and lament, and it talked about all of the things that as Israelites had to go through, and even into the 3rd chapter, Jeremiah the prophet, that was a part of that. And it really, because Jeremiah tried to give warning, and people would not listen. In saying that, I'll go back to your first message, if it's okay that I...
Yes, go ahead.
So, with your Esther chapter 1, I listened to that last weekend at home. Did you know that? I took notes. You're being silly. Queen Vashti was the trophy wife. I think it was what you referred to that as.
Yes.
And she did not want to come. The king had his banquet, he'd been drinking, he wanted to show her off. Regardless of what she did, be it right or wrong, in the symbolism of the king calling for her, she refused to come. So she acted in a way of rebellion. So if we look at Yahweh as the high king, and we refuse,
calls us and we refuse to come.
That was the deeper part of the message that I got. So I know that you've talked about Esther. This whole obviously the book's name is Esther. The whole message between the 1 and the 2 has been about Esther and Mordecai and being an influencer or a destroyer. But we can destroy ourselves.
That's right. Rebellion.
We destroy ourselves when we don't answer the Most High whenever He talks to us or when He calls for us. We expect Him to answer us, when we pray. And people love to misuse the whole, if you ask for it, it'll be given unto you, blah, 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 because they leave out the rest of that.
Yeah, they leave the part out.
And that's not to say, that there's not room for improvement, for people, myself included. But that really stuck out to me about Queen Vashti, that she, it was on a higher level. I don't know if I'm making sense.
No, she didn't honor the king.
When
we don't
honor
answer the
the Most
call,
High.
you're not honoring Him.
But you're destroying yourself.
And she did.
We
She
really self-sabotage. We mess ourselves up because she's blessed. She's a queen. Hello,
she lost everything.
She had everything that she took away from her.
She lost her royalty.
The only thing she didn't lose was her life.
Son,
He could have had her hung.
No, okay, yes.
He could have.
Yeah. Well, and think of it even on a spouse level. When you have a spouse that one's doing right, one's not doing right. How many times do you risk? We risk everything that we've worked hard to build. So that got my attention in that particular message. Also, like, on a spiritual relationship level, on a covenant with a spouse relationship level, business contracts.
Yep.
You can mess yourself up big time.
Yep, we talked about that. Yep.
I'm talking about big time mess yourself up.
Oh yeah.
And that's for warning. That's just for eye opening. That's not for nailing somebody to the wall. That's not, there's a lot of different ways that could have been interpreted. She had an attitude. She didn't want to be paraded around.
I hear a lot of people say,
She didn't want to be
this.
shown off.
I'm going to do this tomorrow. I'm going to do that tomorrow. This is what I got planned for this year. I try not to say that no more.
Yeah, because we don't know.
Because what the word literally says, yesterday's gone. Tomorrow's not here yet. All we have is...
Right this second.
That could have been my last breath. All we got is right now. And because I know people that had plans for this year. Oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. This is going to happen. This is what we're going to do. Well, their plans got blew up like a bomb. And now they're scratching their head and scrambling. What am I going to do?
Well, and life changes that fast. I mean, we all have very big experiences in that, just within the last few years.
What was...
With my baby sister passing, your brother passing, and I'm sure, yesterday morning when my aunt got that call from the nursing home that they had to send my grandmother back to the Thomasville hospital, I don't think that it was realized that could be the last couple of days to spend with my grandmother. Obviously, you prepare yourself for anything at any moment, but I can imagine how life-changing that was for her for that day, for yesterday. And then there's today.
I had a loved one.
There's so much of that has been happening, like, just the things that are so life-changing. You could fall off of a tractor and break your back. There's so many things that she could get into and she's almost gotten into an accident before. She had somebody else get out of their vehicle and try to jump on her and show their butt and act a fool.
Well, she was riding down 84 out there one day.
Yeah, she
and
did.
the truck that was supposed to have been behind the other truck with flashing lights wasn't there, and she almost and she ran into that thing. Marlena wouldn't have been sitting here.
And there's so many.
The Most High, she just happened to see it. And, I had loved ones just this week was been in town with friends and was going home. He didn't make it home. Didn't make it home.
Well, that's why all the more reason why
We should be ready in season
you have
and
to
out.
be able to know, like the message says, are you an influencer or are you a destroyer?
That's right.
Are you destroying yourself? Are you destroying others? Are you influencing people? Are you, having people to look at you as a mentor that leads by example? I mean, it all matters. And the thing is, listening to the Most High and what He has to say, because it can save your head. It can save your family. Because those 10 sons of Haman, they had to annihilate that seed because they were the seed of Haman. And they had to wipe out those 10 generations.
And that was the same for the family of Achan.
Yes.
Well,
They had to,
Y'all talked about that within
Yeah.
the last 6 months. I
I
mean,
have a loved one.
it's a thing.
We have a certain son that Michael says is a sleeper. And when Michael says something, over the years, when he says something, it 99.9%. Well, they come to me for some advice the other day
Sit back, please.
because I was asked to speak, and the first thing, I gave him some advice, and don't get up there and don't say this, because this person's not. And I was sitting there the other day, and when I was watching him speak, he's dead. I don't know if I can do that again. I said, oh, you're going to do
Sit
it
up,
again.
son.
But don't be surprised if you're not a preacher one day. A truthful preacher. Oh, no, I don't know about that yet. That's just, because he don't know what Michael's told us. But I know there's a lot going to have to happen for that to happen. But, and Michael just always told us to be truthful with them. Tell them the truth. And I did.
Well, it's a lifestyle, as you've learned in this message, that it's a lifestyle.
Yes.
And it's a sacrifice. Esther and Mordecai put their self aside, and they fasted and prayed for 3 days without food or water for other people, not just for themselves, but for other people. And that was true love. They loved them enough to sacrifice.
They loved Esther.
And their servants, their handmaidens that they had, their chamberlains. And that spoke volumes to me, because if you can find one handful of people that were going to stand with you and be there with you like that, you're going to be doing good. If you can feel one hand up, that's what my mom always used to tell me. If you can feel one hand up with friends, you'll be doing good. True friends. Because the Bible tells us that man will fail us every time. And I hear stories after stories of people that have had relationships where they were close and they ate together, they, spent the night at each other's house, went to church together, whatever, and now they're no longer in communication. So, in saying that, you need to be careful who you spill your guts to. Because one day you may think they're your friend, and the next day they may be your foe. And that's why you have to have a relationship with the Most High. So, if there's anyone in this place or under the sound of my voice that this message has touched your heart, and you see that you may be a destroyer in areas of your life and you're self-destructive, that it's time for you to, confess to the Most High that you are doing that. You're holding bitterness, you're holding anger, you resent people, you are jealous, you're haughty, you're high-minded, you're prideful, and you only want things to go your way, and you want to be paraded around in front of everybody, and you want notoriety. It's really a dead-end street. It's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to go good for you. And you're not going to be successful in the end in wearing that royal crown of life. Only those that are going to be obedient and righteous, that endure unto the end, will be saved. And I pray that you would recognize where you are in your life and where you are right now today, and that you confess that whatever it is, if you've stolen, if you've committed adultery, if you're fornicating, if you're backbiting, if you're slandering, if you're lying, whatever it is that you're doing, that you confess those things, and you go to the people that you've wronged, and you ask forgiveness, and make it right. Pay back your debt. Make it right. And ask the Most High to forgive you and to come into your life and take up habitation. And for the Ruach HaKodesh to lead you and empower you to do the right thing and to make the right choices and respond in the right manner and associate with those that are like-minded. You're going to have to keep yourself separate from worldly people and from people that aren't in true connection and don't want to walk the chalk line, because it is a lifestyle. And if you're interested in getting a foundation, you can contact us here at 229-498-8044, and we'd be more than glad to counsel you. We can do it over Zoom, we can do it over the phone, we can do it in person. And we celebrate with you if you've made that confession. We celebrate with you, and the angels are rejoicing. And we thank you for being attentive. We thank you for the time that you've taken to sit and listen to this message. And we look forward to the next appointed time. And we thank you again. And share this message. Yahuwah bless you, and may his face shine upon you. Shalom, which means peace.